G'day guys, Matt here from Not in the Manual. Just want to do a video today on the universal mobile connector. Now my car, when I bought it 18 months ago, came with the UMC, and these days the cars don't come with it, so I thought it might be handy to do a quick video on this and just explain to you its functions, its pros and cons, and whether it's something you need to have, whether it fits in with your charging routine or your charging plans. So for me, I use it for 99% of my charging, and I charge most of my time down here in my underground work car park, and yeah, I just plug in there and, you know, we charge off the solar panels here during the day at work. So, and the bulk of the charging for my car is done off solar. So yeah, I'm doing it here using that connector, and it's fine. The first thing you learn owning an electric vehicle is the majority of people are going to only be topping up a small amount of battery charge each day. So a lot of people just aren't going to need a fast charger. So yeah, I mean, yeah, the universal mobile connector is, it's not a charger in itself, it forms a part of the charging circuit. So the actual onboard charger is built into the car, and it's always mobile, it's always with you in the car. So what the connectors are doing, the mobile connector, the wall connector, they're providing a safe power supply or a controlled power supply to the onboard charger in the car. So that's what their function is. So that's connecting your car to the grid and giving you a safe power supply to the car. And it's controllable by the car, the onboard charger. So in the car, you supply power in through the Type 2 plug or the Tesla plug, depending on where you live, and that feeds power into the onboard charger, and the onboard charger is controlled by the BMS, the battery management system. So you'll start to learn all these little acronyms, the OBC, the onboard charger, the UMC, the universal mobile connector, and yeah, you'll get to learn these as you've owned an EV for a while. So I just thought my car included this charger. Your you know, these days they're not included with the car. I think it's a must-have, and it's quite easy to just throw in your car and have in there all the time. Whether you're using it to charge regularly or whether you're using it just for traveling. It's quite a handy thing to have, and I don't think you should be traveling without some form of a universal mobile connector, whether it's a Tesla one or another brand. I find that the Tesla UMC is good value for money. Here in Australia it's $550 Australian dollars. I think they're about 250 US dollars, and yeah, you can get the little adapting tails for it and everything. So I'll just show you where I keep it. It's always in my car in the frunk. So you can see that here. I've got a few things to show you today, but basically the UMC comes in its own little bag here, and I keep that in the front here. I've got my bigger Type 2 to Type 2 cable there. And then I keep the UMC here, but I don't always carry these adapters around with me. So let's get it all laid out on the floor, and we'll have a look at each, you know, the connector and the little tails that you can adapt to with it. And we'll just go through some different charging rates and things you can expect to see. All right, so here we have all the tails. Here we have the UMC. And then I've got an RCD device up there, and we'll explain what all these things are. So this here is the universal mobile connector. So here is the connector itself. You can see the receptacle there for the different tails, depending on what voltage supply source you're going into. We have the Type 2 connector here, and we have some ports on there, pins, for connecting to the car, and that is mostly a European standard, and we have that here in Australia as well on the Tesla vehicles. Type 2 or Menikes type plug. It has the door charging flap release button here on here, which you may not get with a non-Tesla portable connector. So it has a 6 meter long cable, which is quite long, quite good. Not designed to be used with extension leads, but if you have no other choice, it's fine as long as it's a heavier duty extension lead. So I've got one here that we use from time to time, and it's a really nice, thick, heavy-duty cable. The car will, you know, the mobile connector is going to look at the voltage, supply voltage coming in, and if it senses too much of a voltage drop from an extension cable or, you know, inadequate wiring or something, then it's going to protect you against that voltage drop. So, all right, so now the UMC with the car comes with 2 tails. So that's these little small black tails here. We've got 240 volt 10 amp here, and you can tell by the size of the earth pin. We have a 240 volt 15 amp. So you can see that bigger earth pin here. So the 15 amp plug won't plug into a 10 amp point. So that's quite good. So that's what comes with the car. Now everything else you can see here I've bought as additionals. And here at work we've got a few 3-phase plugs. And I bought these tails thinking that, you know, we could charge off these 3-phase points. But I quickly learned that the 10 amp 240 one is, you know, quick enough. If I need to charge faster, I can always go find a DC fast charger somewhere anyway. So it's no problem, but I think traveling it would be essential to have as many options as possible. So basically what I've got is a 20 amp 3-phase plug. Now it's not using all 3 phases. So I'm not an electrician, but 3-phase, the basics of that is you have, well, single phase first is you have an active and neutral line coming into your house, and those 2 wires connect to appliances, lights, things to make them operate, and that's where your current actually flows back and forth at the 50 hertz, the AC voltage. And then you have an earth pin which is there for safety reasons, so that, you know, it's there to protect the circuits and you. So what they're doing, it's a 3-phase plug, but they're only using one of the phases, so a 240 volt phase. So this is designed for a 20 amp 3-phase plug, and the plugs themselves are different. This will only plug into a 20 amp receptacle wall plug, and you can see in the back here there is only 2 wires and an earth. And then also the other thing I didn't mention is there is temperature sensing with these tails. So that's something to look out for when you're buying a non-Tesla one. Portable charger, is that it has temperature sensing. So there is temperature sensing in these plugs. So if they get hot and start melting, the mobile connector will cut out as a part of its safety. So these all have that temperature sensing circuit in them as well. And this is a 32 amp 3-phase plug. And this will only plug into a 32 amp 3-phase point. And once again, it's only tapping into one of the phases, giving you 240 volt 32 amp. And this is a 240 volt single phase 32 amp. So this is what I planned on setting up at home. So I've actually got in the front of my car here, I plan on getting an electrician to come and install this for me at some stage. So this is a 240 volt single phase 3 pins. So you have active, neutral and earth. And I'm planning to just get an electrician to put that circuit in. So what they need to do is put in a separate circuit in the house, run it to this. It needs to have its own circuit with an RCD, a residual current device. It needs to have that safety, its own individual safety circuit and circuit breaker. So I plan at some stage to get that set up. That's going to give me 7 kilowatts of charging speed, which is pretty quick for a home charger. And that will be this UMC. So I don't need to have, you know, if you get something like that set up, that's a lot cheaper than the wall connector. And you can have that set up at your house. You know, you can have this installed outside, somewhere near your meter box. You might only want to use it every now and again if you need to charge a bit quicker. So that's an option too. So what actually happens when these tails plug in, the UMC works out which tail is plugged in. It's got a resistor or something in there that we can work it out, which tail is connected. And then what the UMC does is you have your different ports here. So you have this one here, this is the single phase. So we have the active, neutral and the earth pin in the middle. And then I always get these confused. These are basically your control pins. So you have a control pin up here, and then you have a plug present pin. So the control one is how the BMS or then the onboard charger communicate with the UMC, and they tell it what power to supply, and they can control the UMC through that pin. And the other pin here is basically the present pin. So that tells the BMS or the onboard charger what type of power, you know, what the capabilities of this connector are. So if I've got the 10 amp 240 plugged in, it can do 2 kilowatts or 10 amp 240 maximum. It's telling that onboard charger how much power it has available. So the UMC is managing that and communicating with the onboard charger or the BMS. So the 15 amp tail will give me 3.6 kilowatts. The 20 amp tail here will give me 4.8 kilowatts. And either of these 32 amp single phase tails will give me 7.6 kilowatts. So basic electrical, you have to work out power, it's voltage times current. So it's 240 times 10 gives me 2.4 and so on, 2.4 kilowatts. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to show you how to use it. We will just plug in the 10 amp 240 tail, and then we'll plug it into the car and see how it uses, and then I'll explain a little bit about the charging side of things and what speeds you can expect with the different adapters. The other thing we need to remember here is this, why I've got this here. The Tesla UMC does not have an RCD built in. So that is the safety circuit that is measuring the resistance. It's a safety circuit. It measures the resistance to the earth from the, I'm not going to try and explain it because I'm not an expert, but it's there to protect you, and it's designed, most houses these days have RCDs built in. So if you try to do something silly with your power system in your house, it will save your life. It will cut out the power when it senses an earth fault. So when it senses earth leakage. So if you've put a screwdriver in a power point, or you've got a faulty appliance and some of that voltage is leaking to the earth, an RCD will pick that up within milliseconds and trip the circuit out to save your life. So the Tesla UMC doesn't have an RCD built in. But most circuits you're going to be plugging this into will. But for those occasions, when you're traveling and you're not sure if you're staying in an Airbnb, a rental house or something, and you're not sure, then I've got one of these things that's called an amphibian, and there are many other, that's just one brand, but it is an RCD and an adapter to go from 15 amp to 10 amp. So you can see the different plugs. So we can plug a 15 amp plug into here, and it has a 10 amp end on here. Now this is originally designed for camper vans, RVs that require 15 amp sometimes and only have a 15 amp plug but need to be able to tap into 10 amp circuits. So this provides some protection for the 10 amp circuit. So you can plug limited 15 amp devices in. So what that means is I can take this 15 amp tail with me and leave the 10 amp tail at home, and take this and plug in. Then I've got my RCD and I've got that extra level of safety when I'm traveling, and it works well. So what some people use these for is charging at a higher rate. So sticking the 15 amp tail into the UMC and charging at 12 amps or whatever. And I mean, that's just not safe. This will sort of allow you to exceed 10 amps slightly by adjusting the charge current in the car. But I don't think that's very safe because things get hot. This tends to cut out anyway if you try and pull more than 10 amps through it. Once it warms up inside, initially it will allow you to draw 12 amps supply, but once it heats up, it will just start tripping out. So in the long term, it's not going to be a good thing to do anyway. And yeah, don't really mess with your electronics and electricals and things at home. Don't try and push it because things get hot, things melt, and they can catch on fire. So you should always be careful. So yeah, let's get it set up and we'll plug into the car and see what happens. So you can see there we're plugged into the 10 amp 240, and this is an industrial power point. Obviously your power points at home aren't going to look like that. And we can see everything's lit up green, which means power supply is all good. Then we take our type 2 plug, come over to the car, and this is the difference here. Make sure if you are getting a non-Tesla that it has this function. So walking up to the car, you can just press the button here, charge flap opens, plug in, and then the blue light is the UMC communicating with the car. Once it's done, all that happens quite quickly. We then get the green light and we are charging. So I have the 10 amp tail plugged in, so 10 amp times 240 volts gives me 2.4 kilowatts. All right, now here in the car you can see 2 kilowatts, 10 amp, 229 volts. So here where I'm plugged in is down the opposite end of the building to where the main power is coming in, so we have a bit of a voltage drop. If that drops down below 220 volts, what will happen is the car will automatically wind back that supply until it gets the voltage back up again. So we're all still good here, but if you try and run an extension cord, that's what happens, is that voltage will drop down, then it will dial the current back to 8 amp, 6 amp, whatever it needs to get that voltage back up. And if it still can't do that, then it will cut out altogether and give you a warning message. Okay, if we go to the charging screen here, what you can do is manually dial back the current. So if you've got a bit of a weak circuit, you're getting some error messages, you can dial that back to a certain current. I don't really need to do that very often, but you got the ability to do that. If you were using a double wall outlet, a lot of them will only draw 10 amps combined. So if you were running something else off that double wall outlet, you might want to run 5 amps here, and then you might be running another appliance on the other double point. That's not ideal. You really should have this charger plugged into a single outlet, but you've got the option here of dialing the current back. So, or if you had you know, a shed out the back of your house, you knew you had a bit of a voltage drop out to that shed for whatever reason, and you want to just dial it back because you don't want to be tripping the circuit breaker, or, you know, as I explained before, having a voltage drop here, you've got the ability to dial that current back. If there's ever an issue, the car is going to dial that back automatically anyway. So let's go back and have a look at Scan My Tesla anyway and see what's going on. Okay, looking back here at Scan My Tesla, we can see we're only getting 1.9 kilowatts back into the car, but before we looked, we've got 10 amp 240, we should have 2.4. But what's actually happening is we are supplying power to an onboard charger that then needs to convert that AC voltage to a DC voltage, and we're also stepping up to 354 volts. So we're going from 240 up to 354 volts, and there are some losses there when you do that. So these losses generate heat, your onboard chargers get warm, a lot of that energy gets lost to heat doing that conversion, both from the AC to DC, and then from 240 volts up to 354. What you've also got is some onboard systems running. So you might have some AC running, or you might have fans running, or there could be some cooling pumps running, and that's going to all eat into this here. So that's why, you know, we're seeing, I'm seeing 2 kilowatts there, but we have 2.4 available coming in, and that's why. So you might go to a 50 kilowatt charger and you'll see 40 kilowatts. So that will be some losses through the charger, and plus the car may be, you know, with DC fast charging, you get the battery trying to heat up, and it could be using the rear motor or the heat pump to do that and drawing some extra energy. So you're never going to see 50 kilowatts at a 50 kilowatt charger. You're never going to get you know, 2.4 kilowatts from your 240 volt 10 amp charger, and that's just losses. That's just what happens when you're doing these conversions and stepping up and things. So you're going to have some losses there. So really, this is the reality. And it's all to do with voltage and current again. So battery current, where are we? We're, you know, 5.8 amps, 354 volts. You will get pretty close to this figure. So that's, just wanted to explain that, and really you can do your calculations. So this car at 0% is going to need to top up 50 kilowatts, and if I'm topping it up at 2 kilowatts per hour, so kilowatt hours is really just the kilowatts by time. So 2 kilowatts over an hour will give me 2 kilowatt hours. So we can work that out and say, okay, well, it's going to take, if I've got to put 50 kilowatts back in, 2 kilowatts per hour, it's going to take me 25 hours to charge this battery from 0%. And that's the one thing you've got to understand, is you're pretty rarely doing that, especially from a slow charger like this. So this UMC is quite fine for most people. It's going to do the job there. So same deal, walk up, if you've got your phone in your pocket, the car unlocks automatically and you can just pull the plug. So I think that's the advantage to having this switch on here. I think that's a plus. Opening that door, plugging in, it just simplifies things. So if you are buying a non-Tesla UMC, make sure it has a button here. Some of the aftermarket ones do have that, but it's not that common. So this UMC is 550. Each of these tails I think is between $100 and $150, these ones here, and a lot of that cost is this 3-phase plug. So they're still relatively good value. They're worth buying and then just keeping in the car for when you're traveling. And then look, this is another alternative for home, is to set up a single phase 32 amp and then with the single phase 32 amp plug, and that will give you your 7 kilowatts charging at home instead of looking at what are they, 750 Australian dollars for the wall connector, plus a lot of money to get the circuit put in for that. But I haven't priced this up yet, but it's going to be a lot cheaper than getting I don't have 3-phase at home, so this is going to be a lot cheaper than getting 3-phase circuits put in for you can run the wall connector on single phase 32 amp as well, but yeah, you know, it really just depends on your situation. I'm not going to tell you what's right for you, but for me, this is my plan, and this works for me and does the majority of my charging. So guys, we might just leave it there. I think I've demonstrated how this all works, and hopefully this gives you an idea as to whether the UMC is going to look after your charging needs. But I think at least at bare minimum, you should have some form of a universal mobile connector for when you're traveling. So it becomes essential for when you're traveling. And yeah, you know, that's the thing. You can pull up to a rental house and then just, yeah, you know, you just charge the car overnight and just keep it plugged in whenever you're at the holiday rental. And then, yeah, potentially if it's within a couple of hours of where you live, you really don't even need to worry about DC fast charging. Your car has enough range to get to the holiday house, then you would just use this portable charger plugged in at the holiday house. So yeah, I think they're an essential bit of kit. If you've got any questions, please comment. And yeah, hopefully this video has been helpful. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next video.